Good morning, good afternoon, and welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us today, and it's a pleasure to have you here for our webinar. Your data wants to talk to you, the age of conversational intelligence. In this webinar, we'll explore how conversational intelligence gives a voice to your enterprise data, allowing you to gain deep, actionable insights at scale. We will show you what it takes to build this operational and technical ecosystem necessary to leverage these insights, from improving sales and customer data and unlocking new opportunities for your entire organization. We welcome your questions. Please enter them in the comment section and we'll cover them within the last 10 to 15 minutes of this webinar. My name is Oleg Royz, and I'm a VP of Solution Consulting in Data and Analytics and AI at DataArt, a global technology services engineering company. I have 25 years of experience of driving large data and digital and AI transformations, always with an emphasis on business outcomes, ROI. I'm going to be wearing a business hat for today's webinar, and I'm going to introduce my peer, Alexey Utkin.
Hello. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining. I'm Alexey. I'm based in London. My role at DataArt, I lead our data analytics lab, which is our horizontal for consulting services we do in a space related to data. I'm more than 20 years in DataArt and bring more than 20 years of experience of supporting our clients in various transformations, strategic transformations related to technology, digital data. I myself, industry-wise, feel home at finance, so capital markets, financial services, fintech is where I have most experience. But today I will be wearing the technical hat and speaking to Oleg about all these great conversational intelligence capabilities.
Awesome. Let's get into it. As the title of this webinar, Your Data Wants to Talk to You, is a promise, but also a reflection of our current reality. The business world, as we know, is changing at an unprecedented pace. The challenges are more complex than ever before across all industries, from supply chain disruptions going back to COVID years and geopolitical uncertainty, tariffs, ups and downs, and in the market where customer expectations are higher than they've ever been. At the same time, we're experiencing a technological revolution, a neck-breaking innovation in AI, and especially generative AI. We all remember, I think it was 2022, it seems like ages ago, when ChatGPT popped up, and it just changed the perceptions of how we as individuals and enterprises are thinking about adoptions, uses, and applying it in every single industry. It's a lot to navigate. It's the velocity and veracity of the business complexity on one hand, and the force of technological innovation on the other. This dynamic creates a critical questions for every business leader. How do we harness it? How we can generate competitive advantage in this new environment? And the answer lies in our data, your data. For years, since internet and digital revolutions, we've collected an enormous amount of data, from customer calls and chat logs to emails and social media interactions, and the list goes on. But this data has been largely unstructured, siloed, and silent. It's full of hidden signals and insights just waiting to be heard. Dashboards were the only windows to business intelligence and our storytelling capabilities. So the purpose of today's webinar is that we believe that this is going to be the next great competitive advantage for enterprises, from unlocking this conversational capability further with deep reasoning capability on top of your data. And just to set the perspective, maybe, Alexey, can you give us a sense of just by how much has the data has grown at the enterprise level over the past several years?
Yeah, I think we all seen these numbers. The data generally is growing about like 30% a year on a global scale. But your question is more about what happens in enterprise worlds, and I think for the last 5-10 years, a lot of organizations bought into this idea of data-driven transformation and use of wide ranges of data, alternative data, and so on to drive their business and working with their suppliers, partners, clients, in the data ecosystem. And that just exploded how much data they have. And I think the question of deriving value of it is still stands, and the capabilities we're discovering today, talking about today, are highly relevant to utilize all this data.
Yep. Thank you. Let's go to the next slide. And as you can see on the right hand of this slide, some things that we are very much familiar, some things that we actually got to do a lot for our clients in the past maybe 5 to 10 years. And that is really the transition of what's inside of our enterprise, into our data, into visual storytelling capabilities. And sometimes it became to the point that it was too much. Sometimes we maybe created something for the CXO of an organization, it was used once, never again. Sometimes people have to browse. In case of, just to illustrate the example, let's take Sarah, a director of marketing in organization X, and usually we are trying to answer a questions. And in this case, she's trying to answer what's my Q3 campaigns that drove most revenue in the Western region for my company, right? And usually it takes a little bit of time, right? There's not a single answer. You have to stitch the data together. Maybe you have to browse through multiple dashboards. You have to export the data. You have to align, pivot, maybe match it, and then possibly one dashboard tells you one KPI, another dashboard tells you another one. So in reality, in today's world, when business asks a question, they usually go to an analyst, and the analyst goes through all of these details. And again, there's nothing wrong with these dashboards, because as humans, we are natural storytellers, right? We make sense of the world by creating narratives, and these visualizations help us do this. And BI has always been about leveraging data to tell the story of the company's performance. But as we look backwards, and it was a promise of the new technology, it created a little bit of a gated community, right? Because there's a reliance on a handful of skilled analysts in the organizations to be the gatekeepers of the data creation, and it created significant bottlenecks. One is a language barrier. You had to know SQL and translate business questions into a language the database could understand. Structured, by the way, SQL stands for Structured Query Language. And the second one, transparency. There's a black box of KPIs because it was not clear how the data was derived, which table were used, how it was calculated, etc. And yes, we talked a lot throughout the years, ever since, emphasis on data governance. But at the same time, governance was a challenge in managing this type of ecosystem. Alexey, any thoughts why it was a challenge?
Yeah, in general, there are many facets of why governance can be challenging, and some of them are the role of business in the governance. Some of them are, is it to address the regulatory pressure or derive the business value? But in this context, it's more about the picture drawn, all this diversity of tools, dashboards, Excel on the side. Largely the technology foundations and plumbing around wasn't ready to actually even govern this data. All these calculations and analytics and models were spread all over in the data as well. So I think that historically in this context was one of the biggest challenges, which increasingly gets solved more and more through the platforms we'll be covering today.
Thank you. Now let's jump ahead and see the promise of conversational intelligence. And as you can see on the right-hand side, it's a much cleaner interface. And there's no dashboards, there's no details. There's simply a prompt to enter your questions. Just like, we, love our Google search engine, or, Gemini or ChatGPT, right? So in this case, we are going to be using Databricks Genie to demonstrate this capability, but Alexey will mention other technology. But in this case, the angle and the approach is flipped upside down, right? Instead of kind of searching and stitching for information, Sarah can now go ahead and put her questions into the chat. And the chat, again, we'll talk about what it takes to provide that answers, but let's just assume that everything is set up. The chat will say that, your Q3 campaign compared to Q2, we're down 10%. Would you like to see more channels, right? So it prompts you and anticipates your questions, and you can actually follow up or change the question. And in this case, it actually gives you a breakdown by channel, and it seems like your email engagement was a weak spot, and it's due to maybe the timing of the day or something like this. So what I simply wanted to do, and we'll get into the demo later, is that how the opportunity of driving intelligence triggering action and insight can be done a lot more faster. And this promise, right, this promise of can become truly a strategic partner and a company-wide capability, because it turns data from a difficult to access asset into a living, breathing part of your business conversations. And it empowers everybody eventually, from CEO to frontline managers, right? Because it adapts to different personas. A CEO can ask a more high-level strategic questions. What's our potential market share for our new product? While a marketing director, a Sarah, can ask maybe more granular questions. Now, again, we'll get into it. This is the magic and the promise, but we'll get to it in a minute, what it takes from an operational perspective and what it takes from a technology perspective. But let's just sum up some of the benefits and what it means operationally. Let's go to the next slide. So as you can see, the gaps that I've described and the delays in traditional BI can easily be addressed by the new technology and the capability about democratizing the data access, right? We are moving from a model where data access was a privilege to a few and you had to know SQL, to a simple conversational intelligence, like you would have to talk to another subject matter expert, and every employee can become a citizen data analyst. It's it opens up a cluster of opportunities which have never seen before. And transparency and auditability. For example, you can ask how this measure was calculated. What is the source table that made up? How did you come up with this answer? So you can interrogate your agent per se to give you that detail. And ultimately, we'll talk about other features that helps build trust and how feedback loops and everything else improves your capabilities. So this is the framework. But I'm going to maybe position it to Alexey. So with all of this power, what really happens to your traditional data team?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question. And I think, all these capabilities, conversational intelligence and what we see on the slide here, they're certainly very powerful. They're kind of new worlds. A question we always get is like, do I still need my data analysts? Can business just do it by themselves right now, et cetera, et cetera. And on the right side of the slide, you see more of the kind of operating model, which you still need to define and solve for, because these are all organizational decisions which need to be embedded into you rolling out the conversational intelligence capabilities. You need to figure out what happens governance-wise, who will be supporting it, analysts tuning the models. And we'll spend quite a bit of time today talking about how exactly that can be done. So in other words, you still need human in the loop. You probably, you get the loop bigger, so you probably need a more capable, more skilled human, because AI doesn't, solve the problem of you not having a skill or knowledge. It's like once you have the skills, when you understand what you're doing, it can, accelerate, enhance, amplify what you're actually doing and get much bigger benefit. But the people who were looking after your data and modeling and doing BI before, they will find a new kind of roles, new purpose in this new conversational intelligence reality. And we will be describing how exactly we see that's happening. But yeah, that's my take on it.
Well, let's get into what it's actually behind this. I heard the term LLM. Maybe you can put some color to it.
Yeah, sure. So, let's maybe dive a little bit into all this magic Oleg was describing. How does it work? And of course, ever since Gen AI explosion started, a little bit less than 3 years ago, no doubt that there were many people who tried to bring LLM models and Gen AI models into context of their organization, of their data. And you can think of LLM as your kind of junior colleague who just joined the company, who knows maybe many things about the world outside, much theoretical knowledge, but doesn't know anything about your organization, your rules, how you call things, etc., etc. And many people kind of learned it from the first attempts to use LLMs for internal data. They learned that outside of trivial use cases, it has many challenges and problems to overcome, accuracy, lack of accuracy, or hallucinations. Every time it doesn't find the right context or right data, it will give you answer which looks plausible but not actually correct based on the real information. There were, of course, challenges to do with access to data. There were stories when a co-pilot would go and find the data set of like payroll data and will help curiosity of colleagues in the organization to discuss compensations of their peers and so on, which of course you don't want. Other cluster of challenges were related to data quality and kind of lineage of data. So it's like, the model would, if you bring it to your data platform, find their, data set, which arguably is not, fit for purpose, not a high quality, maybe it's raw data, etc. And, it will be happy to serve answers based on this data. So this kind of early challenges were learned. But if you think conceptually, what is needed to make it work? So here on the left side, you see the typical contents of your databases or data platforms, right? So you see tables, you have some data, users, products, orders, depending on your business. But then, you may have some schema, some descriptions and so on, but that's kind of not enough. And on the left side, you see all the different things which are required to be provided as a context or as a surrounding functionality to Gen AI and large language models to actually, make them work reliably, accurately, trustworthy in the context of your business. So you need things like data models, glossaries, definitions. You need indication of quality of data. You need maybe more sophisticated, models like semantic models, knowledge graphs to provide as a context, and we'll be discussing those. And you need, of course, access controls, quality controls, feedback loops. Again, that's a part of our further discussion. That's just to give you kind of initial idea of what can be required.
No, that's great, Alexey. But one of the questions that kind of pops up in my mind is that there's such a large proliferations of different LLM models, open source, proprietary. How do leaders need to determine one from another? Can you share some thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's a good question. And indeed, it's really hard to follow the race and evolution of the models. Like if you only do that, that's probably a full-time job just there, because every model is like a new model gets released every several days, and they all have great capabilities. But the true to bring it to the context of having a conversational intelligence capability in enterprise setting, it's not so much about the model. So you need to solve to be able to plug different models, different versions, update new versions, bring maybe new providers. It is more about all this context, all this surrounding ecosystem, and this is what we'll be speaking about, how to enable it and bring it to the context of any model which you actually choose to utilize.
That's great.
All right. So with this, let's actually make it a little bit visual and real for you. And as promised, let's have a quick demo of actually what we are talking about here. And for the sake of demo, we chosen to show it to you on a Databricks Genie, which is one of the prominent platforms with this conversational intelligence capabilities. But that's in the interest of time. We also do these things on Snowflake Cortex, on AWS Q Business, on GCP, on Azure, on many technologies. And of course, there are many kind of bespoke providers of technology which focused exactly on conversational use cases like ThoughtSpot and Zenlytic and so on. We are not covering all of that in the session today, but we want to get you the general business idea. So here, what you see is the Databricks workspace. And let's first assume I'm a data analyst or data ops, data engineer. I'm the kind of data specialist person who first needs to set things up, right? So the crucial parts of this experience is the data catalog. So the data catalog is where your data is described. And we here have a use case of a grocery store. So the types of data you see are the customers, orders, sales, stock, inventory, etc., etc. These are our data sets. What's important is that you see, for example, you see all the descriptions of the tables, you see descriptions of the fields, which are pretty important because Genie or conversational intelligence needs this context again to sustain the conversations with business, because they may be referring to these terms. There is functionality to either edit, or you can actually use AI to help you generate these descriptions to speed things up. There are such things like lineage, for example, for the table, so you can see what data is coming from what sources, and you can visualize these dependencies. You can see upstream, downstream dependencies, and that plays a role in explaining how certain answers to the data were derived. There are indications of data quality, as we said, is pretty important, whether it's high quality data and so on. The version of Databricks we're showing you today is a free version. In enterprise version, there are more sophisticated governance features, like you can mask data, you can filter data, and so on. And typically, you would have maybe a governance person mentioning permissions or applying masking of data to certain columns, whether it's like personal information, etc., and use kind of governed tags for that. But in general concept, this is how you set up your data and set up your governance, so you control what you see. And now switching to the actual conversational intelligence, the Genie experience. So here you have what's called Genie spaces. They are each kind of segregated each space for certain type of conversation. And typically, organizations choose to organize those around the business domains. So let's first cover, the configuration side, and then I'll show you the user experience. So in terms of configuration, you put a few things. So one, you need to explicitly bring, and here you kind of bring from your data catalog, you bring the data which you want to be a part of conversation. That kind of speaks that this type of capabilities are grounded, they governed, they are tuned to produce accurate, trustworthy results. So you explicitly choose the tables. There are other things like, for example, there are instructions for the model, or for example, what role it should assume. Maybe you want to cover some terminology, business terminology, part of your semantic model. You can cover certain formats, how to take information in, how to output information, and so on. So basically, any similar to your ChatGPT or any other LLM experience, you bring a lot of like context and instruction system prompts here, which alters the way the model will behave. And there are certain other bits. For example, you can describe how different entities and tables are related between one another. So one, the Genie will understand that these relations exist and use those in the analysis, but as well, it can run some of these kind of joins more optimally. And then there is the experience of you can, for specific questions, define the queries, which then will be run if you want, for example, to have an optimal query for certain question, or when maybe Genie doesn't do what you want it to do, it kind of does it wrongly, you can override what it's doing and for certain queries. And then you have monitoring functionality, which I'll cover a little bit later. Let's now dive into kind of the user experience, right? So what does the user see? So here right away, you have the conversational interface, which is similar to what you normally have in the context of like ChatGPT and so on, but it's of course plugged on the data you have. And right away, you see some of the questions which are suggested to maybe get the users going with ideas what they can ask, and you can explicitly ask, like, explain me what data is there and what questions can I ask. But let's hit it with the first questions. What were our sales during the last month? And I'll cover a little bit of what the user interface we see. So few important bits to pay attention. So one, the model actually plays back how the model understood the question you're asking, so you can validate that it's actually got it correct. So that's kind of one point of validation. Then it runs the actual query, and depending on your technical abilities, you can actually see the query which was generated on the back of the question you asked, which is helpful for data savvy people and for data ops people. And here it's a little bit mixed because I'm like an admin here, so I see functionality like add instruction, which is normally seen by the data specialist people, not only by the end users. Anyway, so that's the format of the kind of output. You see the data output, you see the chart, you can download it, etc., etc. But what's more important is then have the kind of feedback controls, right? You can say, okay, it was correct, it's fine, and the team will the system will learn from its experience, and ops team will see that it was working fine. And you see the follow-on questions. Let's now have like another, just a little bit more elaborated example. So I'm asking, can you show sales for the last year per quarter, right? And the model is thinking, and it gives me my sales, but I don't quite like that in the chart. For those of you who pay attention, it actually broke it down by months, right? Or rather, the data is actually quarterly data, but the chart is by month. So I don't like it, and I can say right away, like, please fix it. I prompted with, I want to see this data like as a year and quarter labels, right? And right away it takes it on board and now regenerates the answer to me. So put the labels in, and now I see those in the chart. And yeah, I quite like it. So in general, this is kind of the user experience you get on this side. Now, I promised you to show you the monitoring. So coming back to my kind of data specialist role, looking after it, I can go and see what's actually happening, right? I can see users asking these questions, having the conversations, and giving me feedback whether something works or not. So that kind of gives you an idea how going on, like what needs to happen, right? Someone needs to go and look at it. Okay, I can see as data specialist, I can see what conversation was happening. I can see that, okay, user asked this format, and I quite like, okay, I can look at the query, validate that it's a correct query, but what's more important, I can add it as an instruction. And once I add it, it becomes part of my kind of rules, semantic model. And next time after I've done it, if I ask the same question again, it hopefully will now take this query on board and will give me already things broken down by the quarters. Let's see that happening, and hooray, it happened. So in terms of the chart experience, I think that's really what I wanted to show. But now another kind of minute to bringing it back to the context of BI and dashboards, because I see those things going on, conversational intelligence and traditional dashboards complementing each other. So this Genie experience actually now exists as a part of the BI experience. So once you have your dashboards published, you can as well, you can talk to Genie about the dashboards you see on the screen, and then you can as well click on a specific dashboard, and you can maybe ask your why question. So user looks at it and I don't know, they look, okay, here we have like regions, revenue trends by regions, and I choose this chart. It focuses on the revenue trend. I can ask some question, what region is the most important revenue-wise, and now it will answer and reason about this specific piece of data on the screen. So it's kind of supporting ad hoc and follow analysis, and hopefully it gives me, figures out that United Kingdom is the most important based on the data you see here. So I hope it gives you an idea of the functionality. Maybe the last bit to mention functionality-wise is a lot of users find particularly useful these capabilities to find and discover the data, because unless you're data specialist, you wouldn't know that all these 50 dashboards or 500 dashboards you have in an organization if you're not using those day to day. So kind of can do what's called reverse lookup. So if you want to find something about everything about the company, for example, so you can ask, what about this client of mine, and it will give you data from different contexts around this particular company, and we just find this feature particularly useful for many business users. So with that, I kind of want to, I guess, conclude the demo.
Yeah, Alexey, thank you. I mean, this is wonderful. I think, throughout the demo, you wore several hats of governance resources, data analysts, and a business user. So thank you for demonstrating it for us. But obviously, the functionality is amazing. I'm glad to see that the dashboards are not dead. But can the Genie domain room, once you create it, can it be connected, as not a standalone, but can it be connected in a business process or operational process, whether it's a chatbot or maybe a customer service agent? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, that's actually a great question, because indeed, I think this is one of the most interesting aspects of these conversational capabilities, is that they're completely embeddable. So all these things become broken down. You can embed those into your, I don't know, Teams or Slack chats. You can bring those into the operational systems applications for your customers. You can bring widgets, like for example, here you can have like a copy link to widget and embed it into different places, as well as the conversational interface itself is accessible via API, and actually via API it's even more flexible. You can choose models and so on and so on. So yeah, it's built to be embedded, and I think this is why I think the whole kind of BI space, as we know, it will be changing, because in previous generations, BI was kind of this one tool which was supposed to cater for everyone, but it wasn't really. It was good for data specialists, but not everyone. Here, I think we are on the forefront of BI space being broken down into kind of smaller parts. So on bits which will become data apps, bits which will become conversational interfaces, for which you don't actually need to build dashboards, and still there will be space for dashboards for the most high value kind of visually rich types of analytics for organizations.
Thank you. I think this is a good demonstration of the features, but let's maybe transition to the next topic of what does it actually takes to enable it, right?
Yeah.
I think we covered a lot of operational angles, but let's maybe look at the technology aspect of it.
Of course, yeah, and of course, doing all this conversational intelligence and other data analytics projects, we came to this kind of breakdown on the foundations of things you need to take care of to make it work for your business. So we formulated these three pillars. The first is the data bedrock. This is your unified and governed data ecosystem, data platforms, all the foundations. The second pillar is how to actually get to the semantic models, basically how to get to MVP of your conversational intelligence, how to get started. And the third pillar is the trust engine. It's like how to make it work going on, how to increase accuracy, how to win trust of business users, how to scale it for organizations. So let's dive into these pillars one by one. So the first one, this data bedrock, it's largely your data platform, data infrastructure foundations, but with few interesting aspects. So we broken down by layers. The first is data layer. It's basically what we was talking about with clients on modern data platforms and so on. So typically you have, depending on your organizational needs, data warehouse, lakehouse, data mesh, whatever your platform and architecture setup is, it's still relevant. It's largely needed. Of course, you need to have data provided to GenAI. You need to be able to work with structured data, real-time data. You need to be able to bring data from different systems. All that is still important. Then we have the governance layer, which gets the new level of importance in all these conversational AI and Gen AI capabilities. That's actually where you see the providers like Snowflake and Databricks and AWS, etc., shifting their focus. This is where they actually start to compete more and more. So as we said before, for LLM to work in the context of your data, you need end-to-end data lineage. You need end-to-end data quality indication. Otherwise, it will use data which is not supposed to be used. You need things like data privacy, not to leak, private data in all these chatbots and copilots. You need, of course, access controls. And, if you, for example, using data from many systems, you need these access controls to work in the entirety of your ecosystem. So that's kind of increased importance of the governance. Then you have the yellow block, which is your traditional BI analytics capabilities of organizations, but more important is the threat block, which is kind of relatively new. So these are all the things which are important to enable conversational AI or Gen AI applications, and things like vector stores, which enable you, to index your data for semantic search. There are things to support existence of semantic model, or maybe for more sophisticated setups and needs, organizations may choose to develop knowledge graphs, which have a kind of more flexibility and depth in describing, terms and entities and relations which exist in their business domains, the business they're doing. And the last bit, which is super important, is this ability to swap the models themselves, right? You're not kind of solving for one model, which is pretty essential part. So like this ecosystem basically wraps the model and bridges the data you have and the governance you have into the model. So yeah, that's how we see this part.
Yeah, no, I mean, there's, I think, renewed renaissance towards data governance, because it seems like it's underpinning a lot of all those capabilities. But I have some questions, and I think a couple of them are coming from our participants, which I think relevant. And thank you for posting those. Please keep going, and we'll address them towards the end. But the first one is that we've talked about there's such a huge velocity and volumes of data. Do enterprises need to think about centralizing it or keeping it federated? How does it impact your AI capabilities?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think ability to work with federated data is very nice to have for this setup. It doesn't have to be there. Like in theory, you can bring LLM or Gen AI experience into the centralized data. But I think going on more and more, and we will be discussing some of it in agentic capabilities, you kind of want to work with data which new sources or external data which doesn't have to sit inside of your data platform. So your ability to federate data and govern data for the federated stuff can be pretty important, or very, very nice to have for your business.
Awesome. And I think the second aspect, and it's one of the questions that got posted, is about data integrity. It's important, right? So how do you ensure that your data does not leak into the metaverse of open space, or even sometimes your data inputs in terms of maybe your prompts? How does it, like, people don't see outside of your enterprise what you've been asking, or even within the enterprise? Is it like people, maybe we need to break it apart across the enterprise, but also how you interrogate personally? I assume within enterprise everybody can see it because obviously it's important, but how can you talk a little bit about those different shades of data integrity?
Yeah, that's super important questions. And I think that data integrity have different facets. So one is like relating data to each other. That's super important. It can be done at different levels, but that to make relations in the context of conversational intelligence. But in terms of the access to the data, this is where I think on this platform play, on data bedrock play, the providers, again, such as Databricks and Snowflake, etc., have a very strong value add, because if you think, if you have your own setup on-prem technology, doesn't matter, you run it all yourself and you bring model like Claude to your setup, you still need to solve for this governance, for security, etc. And again, this is where all these providers are really focusing on to solve it for you. So, for example, let's take Snowflake now. As a part of their data catalog, they would have access permissions to internal and external data which you expose to the conversational intelligence. And every conversation is basically is a subject to all these controls. So even if you bring external data, if user cannot see this data, the model actually will not get this data to the context, and it will not use it as a part of conversation. That's the way to control you're not leaking. And again, just want to emphasize that this ability to do this is maybe more important than actually the model you use these days, because you want to make it safe and secure for your business.
Thank you, Alexey.
Cool. Right. Let's just keep the pace going. So want to cover the second pillar, and the second pillar is really kind of how you do the MVP, right? And how you get to the place where you start having the conversational intelligence. And here we break it to the two parts. So one is you need to build this, semantic model, and maybe in different providers, different platforms, it can be called slightly different, but basically you need to make this bridge between this conversational intelligence and what is discussed there. So terms, definitions, metrics, KPIs, relations between data, etc., and the data you have in your data platforms. And historically, a lot of that was happening in the BI world. The BI tools had the semantic layers. And one thing was happening in the last 5-7 years is the semantic layers were pushed to the left. So they were pushed closer to data platforms. When organizations realize they have whatever 5 BI tools, they don't want to duplicate the semantic layers. So there was already a push to externalize it and bring it closer to the platform. And that's super important in the context of conversational intelligence. You want to set it up once, you want to have consistent terminology, etc. That's the exercise of doing this is very similar to, again, what was happening in data analytics and data engineering and in BI space. You need to model the data specifically for, now specifically for LLMs to work. So there are tweaks and caveats to that, but essentially it's the same sort of skills, same sort of knowledge required, data modeling, talking to business, etc. For more sophisticated setups, you may need knowledge graphs, as I said before, which just give you more flexibility, and they can have an edge in terms of accuracy and so on. But that's quite an investment, a bigger investment in terms of modeling. And the second category of kind of what you need to think about is how you go with adoption. And the best practices there is, one, you need to form a partnership with the business unit or domain, which agrees to pioneer these capabilities together with you. So one, to model this semantic layer properly, make sure you capture all this terminology, make sure the model knows what is your financial year, it knows what is your platinum customer segment, it knows what your cash flow runway, all these terms which business uses. You kind of need to work with domain to model it. The second is you need to set expectations of this business people who will be using it first, that it's not, production grade ready, 100% accurate system which they will first touch, right? They supposed to work with you and go through feedback cycles and reviews, etc., to fine tune and augment and enhance these capabilities. And then the last bit, if you go further in builds and more sophisticated semantic models and knowledge graphs as well, there are tools and AI can be used for that. And you also need to solve for going on, once you build all the semantic models, who will be looking after it, what the governance around it should be, because if you allow everyone in your business change your semantic models, that will become the chaotic on its own, and your results will be affected and so on. So you don't want that to happen. So you kind of need to figure out governance model for the semantic layers.
Alexey, thank you. I think, well, one of my questions, but I think you answered, is that AI can be used to derive that contextual information. And I think it can actually accelerate the semantic layer. But what about trust? I think that's your third pillar.
Yeah, the trust is, of course, at the core of it. If this is, and this is actually why all these providers focus on trust and groundedness of these models, because it's easy to break trust, and business won't look at it again. So as I said before, I find the functionality to support the feedback cycles and trust is critical, actually on the very top of importance for the conversational intelligence capabilities. And we demonstrated some of it. There are other external features in all these platforms. There's things like benchmarking and evaluations, for example, where you can have the model questions and answers or queries, and you make a library of those, like unit tests, and you continuously or periodically run those and make sure that the system doesn't degrade in quality of answers. Maybe that model changes, or a sudden change to semantic model or context, it can degrade. So you kind of need to continuously monitor it. Again, we already been through the governance model for semantic. There are things like you increase numbers of verified queries, which you define. So with all this, you build trust. The guardrails can come in different forms, but basically a lot of that can, in a context of the demo I shown, can be a part of instructions. Like, for example, you specifically instruct the model, if it's unsure, if it cannot directly answer the question with the data you have. Just tell to the user, look, I don't have this term defined or something like that. Just, instead of trying to hallucinate and be creative, be grounded. So a lot of that is, configured upfront, but as well learned from the real experience of actually business users using it with the right, data ops people. And then the last bit here is, of course, you need to monitor and optimize the system going on. And there are a few things. So one, of course, the LLM model can generate the queries which are not, not optimal. So you kind of need to monitor your compute costs for certain queries. You may need to, specifically override those with more, cost-effective queries. And there is also another bit, which is the token usage. So since LLMs are used, they consume tokens, which you provide as a context. So all your queries and semantic model is the context for them, and you kind of monitor the token usage. And if it gets exploding, you need to, or your data ops people need to look at like maybe reducing the context, maybe bringing down how many tables you have in the semantic model, how many columns you want to submit to the model on each goal, etc. So there are like optimization techniques which you need to take care of for that not to cost you a fortune as well.
Let's look into the future, Alexey. How do we go, beyond conversational intelligence? What are the different flavors?
Yeah, that's a great point. And in this one, we really kind of see 3 clusters of capabilities there. So the first one, talk to data, which we highly described and we're talking about today and demonstrating today, which again is made to be grounded, trusted, work with specific data, not to hallucinate, very controlled. And then there are other kind of emerging capabilities, which are more powerful in research, in reasoning, and multi-hop answers, which can go and potentially look at different sources, some external data, they look at internet sources and so on, and combine it with the data you have. So one frame how you can think about it is the talk to data similar to BI. It largely works with the data you have in your data platforms, which is mostly historical or current data, but it's not the future data, not predictions, not projections. Whereas the second category, the reasoning, can look and can make projections, can be more creative, can be more powerful. But of course, the other side, it's much more difficult to govern, to ground. So the user is expected to check all the inputs, all the reasoning plans, and make sure it's actually valid for the research they're getting. So in a context of Databricks, this capability comes in the form of Genie Deep Research. In Snowflake, it's what they announced in the Snowflake Summit in June, Snowflake Intelligence. So we see evolution going this way. And then the third cluster is agentic. And agentic is really twofold. So one is how agents can be applied for this conversational intelligence setup. So for example, our second and third pillar, building the semantic model and then building trust. I think in the future, some of their tasks and activities and motions there will be picked up by autonomous agents. Maybe semantic model will be, largely defined by agents, but data specialists need to review it. So this is where evolution goes. But I think agents are exciting, although I think the industry hasn't really solved all the challenges with those yet. But this is the the direction where it will evolve. And the other aspect of kind of agentic is, of course, agents are the thing of the year, maybe decade, depending on your time perspective. But conversational intelligence is supporting these agents in 2 ways. So one, you can shape your conversational intelligence capabilities, like for example, Genie, as a tool for your agent, which you built externally. So you might have Claude desktop agent and expose Genie Space as an MCP tool with model context protocol or agent-to-agent protocol, and in this way, some external agent you're building, suddenly becomes able to talk to your data and reason to your data as well. And we kind of see this pretty powerful. And as well, the other bit of how it's supporting is on this first pillar of the data bedrock, all these red blocks, the vector, ability to bring models, knowledge graphs, and so on. All these capabilities are as well super important, as well as data governance, for your ability to build agents, because you solve through the same challenges. You need to build trust, you need to evaluate, you need to monitor. So in this way, it's all the foundation. So if you kind of make your investments into conversational intelligence today, you will certainly use it for your efforts to build agents maybe tomorrow. Yeah.
No, thank you. I think we are ready for a Q&A, and let me just remind that if you can post your questions into the comments. Again, if we run out of time, please feel free to connect with Alexey and me. Our emails were at the front, or scan the QR code and connect with one of our experts. And as you guys are posting the questions, let me just maybe recap some of the key messages, right? Hopefully you see the opportunity of conversational intelligence, but as we've highlighted, it's not magic, right? It's outcome of solid data discipline. It starts with your data foundations, and then importance and emphasis on curation, building trust, and then through conversational intelligence, unlocking additional agentic capabilities. So if you're thinking about how do I start, right? And again, we do this for a lot of companies as well, but it starts with your data readiness, right? It's always important to start small, just like you are building an F1 car. You don't go racing. You take it in a wind tunnel. You take it into a test spin. So just like with everything else, you pilot it with a small group and then scales this out. And ultimately, we do see this as an opportunity of transformative competitive advantage for the enterprises who are able to harness it, right? And your data already knows the answers. The question is, are you ready to listen? And with that, let me go into our queue of questions. And since I've mentioned the word pilot, one of the questions that I see is that, do you have a point of view on how long is it to actually set up for a pilot for conversational capability within one domain? Let's say it's finance.
Yeah. Well, let me take a stab at it. And of course, the honest answer is like it depends, because it depends whether you have all these data foundations, the platform, whether you use Snowflake, Databricks, or none of those. So this really depends. But if you're in a good place in terms of your data foundations, what we see with our clients is you can get to kind of good work in, POCs, start talking to business about it and start, getting feedback cycles. Sometimes in a matter of, 1 to 3 weeks, but of course, to then roll it out beyond the first working group, sometimes it's like 1 to 3 months, depending again on the size of domain, as well as, I think you still want to capture the topics, the use cases, you still need to have like objective and a target in terms of what you actually POC and, types of questions you want to answer. But yeah, I think it can add value relatively quickly, at least comparing to some of the traditional BI capabilities.
Thank you, Alexey. The second question, I think, probably goes to you as well. Can semantic models be generated via a fast track process? Example, absorb a traditional BI dimensional model from a trusted platform.
Yeah, that's a great question. And, it's the right type of thinking, because of course, in a world where AI is ruling, the conversation, you're lazy, you want to apply AI to everything or automation to everything. The short answer is yes. It kind of a little bit depends on what BI to what semantic model. But like, for example, in Snowflake, again, announcement of this summer semantic model, you can plug in your Tableau and it will indeed mine the Tableau or semantic layer, semantic models for metrics and bring those in the context of semantic models and semantic views in Snowflake. So it's the right type of thinking, even if it's not available for your combination of data platform and BI. We actually have quite a lot of initiatives where we just apply AI models as they are in a bespoke context, and it's a little bit more of plumbing, but we get to quite amplification of efforts on such tasks.
Awesome. And the next question, maybe it's a little bit provocative. It touches on data engineering and the importance of future of data integration. Is data integration still important?
Yeah, to me, if anything, it's more important. I think my take on it is that, of course, AI helps all these things, all modeling and data engineering, and again, we use it in our data work. But I think these capabilities, they only grow the demand, and they are not like, we are not talking about removing the dashboards, right? We are talking that the importance of having all these right foundations for AI in data governance, integrations, lineage, etc., just growing. And we solve as engineers, we solve for efficiency, delivering this to the business, but importance of it is there, and you still need specialists. Like one perspective I take on it is, if you look broadly on AI adoption in the world, the hotspot is AI for engineering. And why is it so? Because engineers, they are well suited to deal with imperfections of AI today. It can hallucinate, can give inconsistent answers, etc. Engineers are, they dealt with it for many years, and in this way, engineers are more empowered with AI tools, and that's a topic of other conversation. But you still need all the skills and knowledge and knowing what to do. So yeah, it is still needed.
Thank you. And again, from my perspective, which is maybe less hands-on technical, I do see that platforms such as Databricks and Snowflake are putting the capabilities that are kind of blending the role of traditional data analyst and a data engineer in a way that you can actually think of that type of data transformation logic without being too technical. So that's kind of where that AI is coming together, and that translation of business rules into technical scripts is being, I think, supplemented by some of the latest AI capabilities.
Yeah, just maybe to add to that. So again, the platforms we mentioned today, Databricks and Snowflake, again, this summer, they all release their own kind of pipelines and the data engineering, declarative data engineering inside of this platform. So I think, yeah, in the future, some of the use cases for data savvy business users, they will be able to source and bring some of the data, using the conversational interfaces into the analysis they're doing. But again, I think they will just add to what's already there, to what the engineers are doing. They kind of will enhance and extend the use of data. But I kind of welcome it, because I think the whole data industry, needs to be aligned with business and responsive, and really bring things quickly to the business users for the outcomes.
Thank you, Alexey. And as we're coming up on time, I want to thank all of our audience members. Thank you for your question. Thank you for your time. Again, we look forward to continue the conversation offline. Please reach out to us or contact our lab at dataart.com. And again, just to wrap up, I think we are thinking that this capability can be transformational, and we can look forward to collaborating with our clients, our partners on delivering these insights and innovation to you. Thank you for your time. Have a great day.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you for joining.